Aloha everyone and welcome to another Tinkers Academy video. I'm your host Kay Elmer, and this video is a further installment in the series Benefits of Quantum Healing, where I essentially recap the various studies that have been commissioned by Leela Quantum Tech on the effects of quantum energy and their products and their services on various biological organisms, people, plants, and pets. And this particular study was released in the fall of 2024, and it measured the effects of quantum energy on parasites. So without further ado, let's jump right in. So right off the bat, the title of the study is called The Effects of Quantum Upgrade on Blood Morphology and Parasitic Stress Factors. If you're familiar with the studies that have been published by the IFVBESA Institute, this one is Project P753.1 called Parasites and Vital Blood. Now, if you wanted to take a look at the study yourself, I highly recommend people do that. Now, all of the studies that have been published are located at the International Association for Quantum Technology and Frequency Medicine. This is a separate nonprofit that houses studies of this sort. So I'll put all the links in the video description below, but if you go to the main page here at the site for the studies, you just go to the click on studies, and this is where you're going to find the one that I'm covering today. So you go to the all studies section here, and you just like right here, there's this one called Parasitic Stress Factors, and you just go ahead and click on that. And what you get is you get the one study that falls under this category. That's just the one study that falls under the category right now. And so this is the one I'll be covering today. And it's, again, called The Effects of Quantum Upgrade on Blood Morphology and Parasitic Stress Factors. You click on Read More, and the first thing you're going to get is a summary of the study and the results. And then right here on the bottom, you can go ahead and click on the actual study itself if you feel like you want to read it. And then they also have a shorter, like an executive summary, they call the authorized summary. And that's where you can find these studies. Okay, so I really highly recommend for those of you who are interested in the detail, because these studies are fascinating. And it's just a remarkable thing that Leela Quantum Tech does, which is they spend a great deal of their profits on commissioning studies, not just to back up the claims, for, encouraging people to try the service or buy products, but really to advance the science on the idea of quantum energy and specifically its beneficial effect on our health. And I just really commend these guys for doing that. And it's all at their own expense. Now, the people that are doing these studies are obviously third-party independent institutions, clinicians, and scientists who are basically commissioned, just like any other science study that's done out in the world. They're commissioned by someone who funds them, but then they are 100% independent and third-party, unbiased, and they simply just take the commission and say, hey, go study this and tell us what you find. And that's all they do. They study it, they analyze it, they publish the results, they give you their conclusions, the scientists, and then they put out the results. And so there's really no influence at all that Leela has other than they just pay for it. And then they get what they get. And that's what all these studies that we're seeing are coming out. And this one in particular is a really deep interest to me because it really deals with the parasitic load on our bodies in terms of like, hey, what is quantum energy doing to help us deal with that parasitic load? So the description of the report or the study is simply that the International Association for Bioenergetic Systems Analysis, which I refer to as the BESA Institute, it's just faster to say it that way. So the BESA Institute was commissioned by the company Leela Quantum Tech to test and prove the effect of the test object. In this case, is they used quantum upgrade. In other studies, they've used blocks and capsules and the underwear and all of this different stuff. But this one was quantum upgrade. And I do want to point out, it's all the same quantum energy, no matter how you're exposing yourself to it. But the test object in this study was quantum upgrade, and they tested it using dark field vital blood microscopy and live blood analysis. Now, the project is concerned with the question, and this was what they were asked to do. The question is, of the extent to which the test object, which is quantum upgrade, is able to have a significant, sustainable, life-promoting influence on the development of parasites in the vital blood of humans, the test subjects. The microscopies were carried out independently of the subject perception of all test subjects. And what that means, it was done in a randomized double blind, which is really the gold standard of science, investigation, which is neither the clinicians that conducted the test nor the participants who were the subjects of the test knew whether or not they were getting actually the quantum upgrade turned on for them or not. So there were two groups that were, they had a number of people divided into two groups. One was the experimental group, and then one was the control group who didn't get anything, so that they could compare the difference between the two. It eliminates the if they're randomized and double blind, then it tries to minimize, if not eliminate, any placebo effect. Okay, so it was done at the same level that all science studies are done, which are randomized, double blind, and so forth. Okay, so the principal investigator, again, I wanted to say that the persons or the clinic that conducted this study was the International Association for Bioenergetic Systems Analysis, which is the IFVBESA Institute. Now, this institute is located in Austria, and the primary clinicians of the institute is a gentleman named Wolfgang Hans Albrecht and his partner Eva Kranke. These two individuals they lead a team of other clinicians and scientists and doctors and veterinarians that work with them in this clinic, in this institute actually. And what they do is they do all sorts of different types of testing for various other for various products throughout Europe, and they're actually one of the leading institutes in Europe that does this type of testing, where different companies, different industries will bring them products and services and ask them, hey, how does this affect X, Y, Z? So now in this particular study, they did an analysis again on blood morphology. They also do bioenergetic systems analysis, and their services cover a wide range of industry, as I mentioned, from technology to agriculture, and of course, for people and animals. So they're very well versed in doing this. I believe they've been in business well over a decade, and they do produce a certificate, and it's kind of a big thing in Europe that if you've got a certificate from the IFVBESA Institute, and it means that that you've been thoroughly analyzed in terms of your product safety and et cetera. Okay, so that's who conducted the study. Now, the methods and materials of this particular study, the study design is described as participants were randomly assigned to an experimental group, which received exposure to the quantum upgrade, and a control group that did not receive exposure, conducted under double-blind conditions. Blood samples were collected and analyzed using dark field microscopy for before and after exposure, which was 4 months, to assess alterations in blood morphology, immune response, and the presence of parasitic forms. Now, the number of test subjects were adult humans. There were 24, and 12 were randomly selected to be in the experimental group, and the other 12 were randomly selected to be in a control group. The dates of this study were conducted between March of 2024 through August of 2024, and it lasted approximately 181 days. The specific analysis that was conducted on the blood morphology was a review of 26 different attributes for red blood cells, also known as erythrocytes. There were 4 different attributes of the white blood cells, as known as leukocytes, and they were looking at closure and dying forms of cells. There were 6 different versions of that in terms of attributes of that category. So there was a total of 36 different blood attributes that were analyzed through this morphology analysis. So there were, scientists that were studying blood, really took a before and after picture of an individual's blood. And the before was at 0 days when they first came in, and they were not using quantum upgrade. And then for the control group, obviously, or the experimental group, after 4 months, they reviewed everybody's blood after 4 months. And then that's how they got the second picture, and then they analyzed the blood after 4 months. So this is just a simple before and after, 0 days, and then 4 months later, once quantum upgrade was running for half the group, they took a look at it and they compared the data that they had discovered. Now the overall results, I'll give you the executive summary. The analysis indicated notable changes in blood morphology among participants in the experimental group. Okay, I'm sorry. I got it backwards. The control group didn't get it. Experimental group got it. Okay, sorry. So the key findings include a significant reduction in the presence of parasitic structures in pathogenic organisms. They showed an improvement in the erythrocyte shape, which are red blood cells. So the improvements in red blood cells shape and function, observations of decreased pathogenic activity, and enhanced immune response. Their overall conclusion was these results suggest that the quantum upgrade technology may harmonize the blood environment and promote a healthier balance in the presence of parasites, potentially influencing overall well-being. And that's the overall, this is just the high-level summary. So what I want to point out, and I want to pull up the study itself, is I want to kind of walk you through kind of just like, what's in the study. It's 50 pages. Most people aren't going to read 50 pages. But let me just walk you through the highlights on what I found was the most interesting aspect of this study. And just so you can kind of get an idea, the depth of detail that these studies get into. And specifically, let's take a look at two of the cases that they reviewed. Now, I do want to say that there were 24 individuals in the study. And this particular publication only basically provides the detail of 4 of them, because you can imagine, it's 50 pages all by itself, and they only covered 4 out of the 24 people. But so they don't go and provide the data on all 24 in the study. Okay, they have the data available, obviously, but the data in the study just basically kind of gives you an example of here's what happened to 4 people, and then they say, oh, and this represents what happened to all 24. Okay, as an example. Okay, to give you an idea of how the report is structured. So whenever you see these reports, I'm just going to kind of blow it up so you can kind of read it. Then right here, basically, these studies are pretty much all the same. They kind of give you the background like I just did. They give you a quick just basically the background, who they are, what quantum upgrade is, how they designed the project. Every project starts out with research questions, and so they ask some questions and in terms of like, what do we want to learn, from doing the study. So they list out their questions, and then of course there's the legend. Here's that 36 different attributes for blood, which they basically provided legend for, to kind of give you an idea of every single thing. All 36 things were looked at, and here's a list of every single last one of them and what they mean. Okay, so there's the legend for the 36 different attributes, and then they get into the first of 4 specific cases that are mentioned in this report. So this is kind of where this is the meat of the study here. It's like, all right, what did they find? Can we take a look at what they looked at? And so here we go. And I'm just going to show you. I'm just going to do 2 of the 4, because I don't want to create these giant long videos. I'm just trying to do a recap, right? So now this is subject number 9. This is the number 9 person, and this is the case before. Now they took 3 pictures before, and then they kind of explained to you what the evaluation or the analysis of the blood the formations in the blood, what does it represent. So let me just kind of go through that briefly for you, so you kind of get an idea again as to the level of detail and the depth of analysis that's done on these blood samples. So now in this case number 4, or test subject number 9, actually, they took a look at the blood, and then so they took a look at the blood, and they found out that the before subject is this is before the subject is confronted with the test object, which is day 1 or day 0, right? They started out, and then they basically say that in the image the symprites can be seen, or symprites can be seen within the erythrocytes. Okay, so there's a lot of terminology that A, I can't pronounce, and B, I don't know what they are. I am not a blood scientist, but here's the data. And so they're basically seeing symprites within the red blood cells, and then they say they are caused by decay and consumption processes of blood cells, red blood cells, by the endobiont. And I don't know what that means. Okay, so I just want to be honest. Okay, so these are highly pathogenic conditions resulting from early parasitic contamination, as the blood was microscoped immediately after collection. Okay, so right here off the bat, this individual's blood showed, right, it's right there in the picture, that there's a decay and a consumption process of the red blood cells by parasites. So there's definitely parasites in this individual's blood. They're consuming red blood cells, and that's what's left of the blood cells after they're basically destroyed by parasites. Now, this other figure here, this other picture of the same person, they show this other situation. I can't pronounce this here, and psosis. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. And is increasingly evident in the extract of the subject's blood condition. These are differences in size between the red blood cells due to pathogenic effects, and which means consumption process within the red blood cell reduction in CIS. Okay, so you're seeing here this stuff right here. That's basically the remnants of red blood cells after they've been basically, basically exposed to parasites. Not good. So, but at the end of the day, what it's showing is this person has parasites, but they're not seeing the parasites. They're seeing what's left over after the parasites mess with these blood cells. Now, there's another one here which shows these other types of things in the extract of the subject's blood condition after microscopy, and there are, I guess, the sclerotics as dry protein symplas. They normally only appear in the blood morphological drying phase. Finding them, okay, this is what it means. Thanks for, thank you, BESA, for explaining what this means. So finding them in the initial stage of microscopy is very rare and indicates an endobiotically advanced phase. So that means bad. And when you look at this, and just with my limited exposure of studying these things for the years I've been doing this for Leela, that's not normal. If you see that in your blood, that ain't supposed to be there. And that just is what parasites in your blood look like. This is what the leftover remnants of parasites, or what the parasites are doing to you. They're literally gobbling up your red blood cells. And so bad. I mean, you can't imagine how any of this could ever be good. So now the amazing part of this is what the study was all done for is in the control group. They basically exposed them to quantum upgrade. So here you go. After quantum upgrade for 4 months, okay, then this is what the person's blood looked like. And so their description of this, and this is the first picture that they took, and the description was this, that the images were again taken a few minutes after the blood sample was taken. All 3 images show that the stressful, highly pathogenic factors from the before microscopies have largely harmonized. They've transformed or converted. The erythrocytes, again, red blood cells, show a marvelous shape and characteristics. At the same time of comparison as the microscopy before, no parasitic contamination can be recognized. The white blood cells are also regular and dynamic. And so they go on to show the other pictures again, and this is from, and they basically just say, hey, we don't see anything that we saw before. And this is after 4 months of being on quantum upgrade. So now I'm just going to show you the next one, which is subject number 8 in the control group. And right off the bat, I don't look at blood. I'm not a scientist, but I look at this and it's like, wow. I mean, this just, that doesn't even look like what blood should look like, right? And so they describe, and this is the scientist's description of this picture that was taken of subject number 8. And they basically say the left section, F1 of the image, shows a symplast within a huge and highly pathogenic thrombus, as an expression of a cyclogenetic stage. I don't know what that means. By shift of the blood pH alkaline orientation, this pathogenicity can only be recognized according to cyclode affiliation, form, and species, and shows itself here as Aspergillus symplast. Section F2, this section right here, already shows a dead leukocyte, leukocyte, which is a white blood cell, as a sign of cyclogenic process. Okay, so translation, bad. Okay, so we get into the second picture, and again, you're okay. Now you're starting to see the red blood cells all clumped up, in this rolled coin, also known as rouleau formations. This is a sign of basically dehydration, lack of oxygenation in the blood. But then you get this big blob thing in the blood, and so this is the description. They basically say, that picture, this one right here, shows another mega mixed symplast in the subject's blood extract. The radiating colored dots indicate a burden on the lungs, colon, and spleen. Around the huge mixed symplast, there are increased levels of money, as I pointed out, dissolving and or dead erythrocytes, red blood cells, left hand of the image. So you've got dead red blood cells. You've got just a lot of problems, and this thing is not supposed to be in your blood. And so this individual obviously had a parasitic load. And so now this is after, same person, 4 months later, again, 4 months after the subject was confronted with quantum upgrade. Now here's the image of that individual's blood. It can be seen in both of the following images that the stressful, highly pathogenic factors from the before images of the microscopies have largely harmonized. They've transformed or converted, and the erythrocytes, red blood cells, show a marvelous shape and characteristics. No parasitic, cyclogenic contamination of the cycloids can be recognized at this point in time. The white blood cells also appear to be really mobile and dynamic, and that is proof. Here it is right here. 4 months later, that in all that horrible stuff that you just saw, completely not present any longer. And this is the second picture for subject number 8. Now I'm going to skip the other two, just because this is just to give you an idea of to the depth of analysis and the detail provided in the study. And let's jump down to a couple of things that I want to share with you about about what they found. And so now they do graphical representations of the before and after, where they measure the various attributes of the blood that kind of show you a decrease in what they were finding. So they're saying, hey, we found like 4 instances of stress blood environment. Afterwards, they only found 2, and this is for the whole group. And then of course they take a look at other before and afters, sections of just different. Like again, they look at the red blood cells, the white blood cells, and the closure and dying stuff, and then they do a before and after to show you how many times they saw it in the before, how many times they saw it afterwards, to demonstrate that there's a reduction in basically bad stuff happening, right? And so then they kind of go through that. They show you all the graphical representations. They demonstrate through statistics that there's a decrease. That's where they get their overall summary, that there was a decrease in parasitic load. And it, quote, and in here, an improvement in positive blood attributes, and so forth. So there's a lot of data. I mean, bottom line, there's a lot of data here that basically walks you through all of the different things. And then when they do the overall summary at the end, you'll find this, I believe, on page 44. Basically, the explicit before and after presentation of the project description for the experimental group. So they say, hey, you know what? This was the experimental group, and this is the afterwards. They basically took a look at these individuals and said, hey, this was the reduction, 50% in blood stress and blah, 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 100% reduction in the thrombus formation, etc. And so then they give you the table that kind of walks you through it, and they look at the interpretation of that specific area that they're looking at, and basically kind of give you an example here that decay processes, a reduction was 25%, and they say this is lower hemolysis indicating a reduced pathogenic load on red blood cells. So it gives you all of the detail and all the definitions if you're interested in that sort of thing. And I definitely wanted to share with you that the data is here in the study if you want to take a look at it. And then I just kind of want to point out a couple of real interesting things that they were talking about in the discussion section of the paper and their conclusions. So I want to make a point here that this was done, and this was what was really great, about just the level of professionalism and the level of detail and effort that BESA Institute puts into these things. It's quite amazing, and I hadn't really seen this before. But they state right here in the study that an attempt was made to deliberately separate parasites from the so-called spike proteins, as described in the abstract of the study. It is clear that there are always overlaps between stress factors caused by parasites and stress factors caused by spike proteins. So they made a distinct effort to separate the two, so that this study only revolves around quantum upgrade, quantum energy, the effect of the parasites in your blood. And then for reading this study, there was a separate study, and I'll be doing a recap on that next, which was they separated out the parasites from the spike proteins and looked at just what the spike proteins were doing, to the blood in a negative way, just like you're seeing here what parasites do to you from a negative way. But they did another study on spike proteins, and so we'll be covering that one next. But that just kind of wanted my point being that this study was very distinctly specific to parasites because they did observe an overlap from the same stress factors, and they wanted to make sure that they were looking at just parasitic stress as opposed to spike protein stress, and so they separated them out. Now, also too, that this does not represent a comparison of sick to healthy, bad image after versus good image, and that's another key aspect too. And so, but rather careful processing of the photo and video material for possibly specific parasite changes and their documentation. So again, they just didn't take a look at, this. I guess what this points out, and this is why I highlighted this sentence, is I wanted to make sure that that people realize it's just not a simple before and after. That they really drilled into whether it's parasitic, problem or a spike protein problem. Then they looked at whether it was sick or bad. They didn't go that route. They just basically really honed in on the specific changes in the various 36 different attributes of the blood from a before and after, and they really provided photo and video evidence when they went looking for those things, right? So they just didn't do a general, list good and bad, but they went looking for each one of these 36 things, and when they found them, that's when they put it in the study and said, here we go, we found it, here you go, here's a picture of it, and now let's look for it again in the follow-up after picture, and we'll see if they're still there. Okay, if you get what I'm saying. Now also too, they want to basically point out that in the follow-up study, the experimental group, unlike the control group, showed that after around 6 to 12 months in the field of the test object, okay? So the experimental group, unlike the control group, showed that after 6 to 12 months quantum upgrade, the pathogenic loads caused by parasites in the vital blood of the test subjects, as determined in the before test, in some cases improved significantly, in others decreased or remained the same. Okay, so this means that the group, the control group didn't get it, the experimental group did. So the experimental group showed, basically they showed changes, either they were significantly improved, or they had a decrease, or some remain the same. And I think that's a key thing I want to point out, that some remain the same. But overall, statistically, the results were very positive. Okay, so, but I want to point that out, that, it's not 100% of the 24 or the 12 that got quantum upgrade showed, a drastic improvement, that there were some cases significant improvement, other cases showed a decrease of, negative stuff, and some remain the same. But the overall study of the 12 statistically showed, that the results were positive. Okay, that's really important. Now, particularly in the control group, the difference between before and after microscopy is clearly recognizable. This is in the direction of increased pathogenicity. Okay, so that's the control group, and that's what so now the control group didn't get quantum upgrade, and they showed after 4 months that they were clearly recognized in the direction of increased pathogenicity. Right, so you got 24 people, 12 of them, all 24 get analyzed. 12 of them get quantum upgrade. 4 months later, the 12 that got quantum upgrade, they did significant improvements, decreased, bad stuff, and then some stayed the same. But the overall group, statistically, they got better. And the control group, who didn't get quantum upgrade, they all showed increased pathogenicity. So they got worse without quantum upgrade on. So take that for what you want. So that's that's why I highlighted this stuff. I really kind of wanted to point out the little details that you don't get in the summary. So then one of the, like I mentioned, they ask a bunch of questions for the study, and one of the questions was, what conclusions, they're asking the scientists, hey, what conclusions can be drawn from the application and the already proven effect of the test object on the situation of parasitic stress factors? Okay, so the answer is, on the one hand, it appears that the current environmental pollution requires the permanent use of the test object. Furthermore, the follow-up to the P7530 study showed that the test object can have a lasting influence on the blood environment and thus on bacterial cyclogenesis. Okay, so the scientists are basically saying, hey, yeah, it has a lasting effect, but because of our environment, it may be necessary that we've reached a point in our evolution that we might need additional quantum energy just to sustain our health. That's what this is saying. That's what the scientists are saying, okay, in this report. I wanted to point that out because it's something I've been thinking a lot about as well, which is how long does all this positive effects last? And are we going to have to live with this forever because of just this incredible onslaught of our environmental stress factors? And so, yeah. And, and I want to point out too, one last thing is, that parasites, there is nobody who doesn't have parasites. If you have pets, if you've eaten, stuff like sushi, and everybody has parasites, just like everybody is suffering from the negative effects and the detrimental effects of EMF, which is everywhere now, okay? You can't escape it. It's in the space now, okay? So our bodies are under so much stress, more now than ever because the EMF didn't exist 100 years ago. And is it really important now that we do something on a day-to-day basis to maintain our health because it's not like it was 100 years ago? And it's sort of looking like, yeah, and the scientists of this study said, yes, it's probably a good idea. It does last, but you may need to keep doing it forever, because of just our world that we live in. Now, again, the 4 cases described in this series are representative of all 24 subjects, both experimental and control, in which absolutely abnormal structures and substances were found. In summary, it can be said that such an abrupt change in the vital blood or peripheral blood level has never been observed from the point of view of a vital blood live blood dark field microscopy or been described in relevant medical forums. It is almost unbelievable how quickly these changes took place within a few months. Translation: these scientists who, this is their livelihood, they've never seen or read in any medical forum anything like this in terms of like how these people who were in the experimental group went from being so bad and physical evidence, blood analysis, they went from being so horribly contaminated with parasites and just 4 months later they couldn't find any trace of them. And that's just never been seen before by the scientists who conducted the study. And that's another amazing aspect of quantum upgrade and just quantum energy in general. So now the last thing I want to point out is that, as mentioned in the abstract on the topic of spike proteins, the spike proteins correlate strongly with physical stress in humans, and on the other hand, they are sustainably involved in the generation of nitrostress. This in turn favors the development of parasitic processes and is thus the cause of increase in further oxidative processes, thus associated with the diseases already mentioned. Okay, you got this. I just want to point this out. One little sentence tucked away on page 49. What does it mean? The scientists are telling us that the spike proteins, in combination with parasites, makes everything. They make parasites worse. In other words, we all had parasites. We all have parasites. And then, come along and 2020 happens. And now the world is contaminated with spike proteins. And guess what we're learning, or the scientists are telling us? Oh, by the way, guys, those spike proteins, they make your parasitic problems worse. And that's what they're saying. Little tiny sentence, page 49. Amazing. So that's really it, folks. I just want to say thank you for watching this video. Again, you can find the study video links below. I'll be doing the other one next, which is the partner study of this one. They did them at the same time. So I'll be recapping that one next, the one on spike proteins. This one is the one on parasites. And I'm bottom line, it's sign up for Quantum Upgrade or get a capsule, get a block, do it for your family. I mean, this just shows you this incredible evidence done by incredibly reputable scientists. So thank you for watching this recap. Hope this was informative, educational, and helpful to you. If you like this type of content, please like and subscribe. I do these recaps. I also do a whole bunch of other stuff for Leila. So if you want to, kind of follow up on what we're learning from a science standpoint, if you want to learn anything else about Leila, just follow my channel, and that's what I do. You can also find out more information on Quantum Upgrade at the quantumupgrade.io, and you also can find more information at the Tinkers Academy, which is my blog, where I document and correlate all the data that I run across into one place and kind of create playlists and you name it. So there you go. So thank you very much for watching the video. Hope this was helpful for you, and I wish you all the best of health, and have a great day. Aloha.